there, everyone. Well, good afternoon from here in Australia, but if you're joining us from somewhere else in the world, good morning, good evening. My name's Sarah Young. I am a cloud security advocate here at Microsoft, and today we're going to be doing a bit of a panel with some very illustrious guests. To start with, go around the room and let everybody introduce themselves. And whilst we're doing that, we'll put our code of conduct up on screen. TLDR, be nice. But James, do you want to introduce yourself first?
I think I'm going to be game, and I reckon I'm going to let Lars introduce me.
Oh dear. Ooh. All right. Well then, yeah. I don't know who James is. I've never met him, so no, that's not true. James is he's the premier. He's the leading expert in the world on what are they called? They're like at the end of your shoelace, and there's a little plastic thing that goes around it, and any kind of those. I think in one movie they're called a flugel binder, but that's that's the core of his expertise. And I don't really think I need to say any more than that. He does some Azure stuff too, I think.
Not bad. He's bang on.
Got anything to add to that?
No, go for it, Jim.
No, obviously, yeah, my name's James. I'm Microsoft MVP for Azure. And yeah, really excited to be on today's panel.
Cool. Well, Lars, would you like someone to introduce you, or would you like to introduce yourself?
I mean, I've kind of asked for it now, haven't I? But I know I can do it. That's all right. My name is Lars Klint. I'm a developer advocate for Pluralsight, a training platform, and I'm also an Azure MVP, and I do many things with cloud, including wearing shirts. So, yeah, excited to be here. Keep it short.
And then last but certainly not least, Akanksha, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm going to keep it basic and just say who I am and not go down the weird pathways. But no, my name's Akanksha. I'm based in Melbourne, and I'm a data and AI consultant, have been for the last couple of years. And I'm also an AI MVP. And I guess just going to say it now, hay fever in Melbourne has reached next level highs. Sniffles are along the way for the rest of the session.
That's fine. Well, I don't have hay fever. I used to when I was a kid, but I was lucky I grew out of it. So I used to feel your pain. I get it. Awesome. So, I mean, I know all of us here could talk about this for a very long time, but we only have 55 minutes. But, today what we're going to talk about is, cloud. Is cloud computing critical? Is that important for our future? Now, of course, all of us are already working in cloud, but, I want to open it up to the floor. I'll let fastest finger first, I wish we had buzzers. Why is cloud important, and why should we care about it? Just for a level set for the room.
Oh dear. I can jump on that one again. I'm not shy. I think in the simplest terms, to use a little bit, it's becoming a bit of a cliche, but it's democratizing access to compute, right? It's you don't need to buy massive servers. You don't need to have access to corporate accounts for data centers. You don't need to understand everything and how infrastructure works. You have access through your computer from your desk to immense amounts of computing power in the cloud. I think it's the best way I can explain it.
Yeah, I think that's really, really accurate, Lars. I suppose for me personally, I view cloud as a disruptor. So my own journey, I've come through cloud from data center into Azure as it is today. But I think it's really amazing how, not only is it disrupting how technology organizations are doing business and providing services to their internal teams, but also how it's disrupting the way that businesses operate. Right? And it's, look over the last 3 months with things like OpenAI as an example, it's turning things on their head for organizations and how they deliver their services to their business. So it's important now, and it's going to be important for the future, most definitely.
Yeah, I guess, there isn't much more to add bar what has already been said, but I think that access point is really where the power is. The amount of developing countries and stuff that are coming up and have access to a machine that has a connection to internet is immense, but do those machines have the capability of doing all that locally? No. It is really just bringing all of those technologies and capabilities out to so many more people now, especially with all the kind of out-of-the-box products that they also offer on top of the compute. I think it's going to be very interesting, the solutions that start becoming very commonplace now.
Yeah, and something I didn't mention before we started, for anyone who's watching, please put questions in the chat. I'm happy to ask them as we go along to our experts here. But building on what we were just talking about, I think there's often been, because cloud isn't brand new now, cloud's been around a little while, but I still think there's a misconception that cloud is only for big enterprises. So, big Fortune 500 companies that have a lot of IT, they have a lot of people. What would you folks say to that? Because I think that's definitely a misconception.
I think I can jump in with that one, because I'm like, clear, it's me. Like, I am one of those people, because the last time I owned a hefty machine was where a company bought it for me. And I was like, okay, great. This is a powerful machine. What do I do with it? Because I don't actually need it anymore. So since in the last 5 years, I haven't actually bought a machine more than 8 gigabytes. Like the tiniest machine I can buy. I don't want anything bigger. That is what I want to use, because everything I actually end up start using is on the cloud. If I need to code something, if I need some very quick solutions, I will turn something on because it'll charge me like $2 for that use, rather than spending thousands of dollars on a machine, which I have to then lug around and carry giant charging pots and everything for it. But it is becoming a lot more commonplace for kind of everyday uses. And I think there was a conversation that I was having recently about ChatGPT with AI people, like very hardcore AI people, like much more hardcore than I ever will be. And they're like, no, it's just so overhyped. People are just making such a big deal out of it. And I think the nuance that's being forgotten here is it is overhyped, or cloud in general is being overhyped because it's so commonplace to people who use it every day. The people out, and that number of people who use it every day is minimal, as in it's negligible number of people in the world who understand these technologies and know how to use it. The real effect of all the stuff is now going to start coming where this is becoming accessible and people start leveraging this every day, which is becoming easier and easier, where things like ChatGPT will guide you through exactly how to do it in a very easy format, or whatever other docs and stuff you want to follow. So it's going to be an interesting path, but it is becoming a lot easier for people to just use and add on to their lives, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like the barriers, I suppose, are coming down. So there's traditionally, Sarah, to your question, there's definitely a perception that I can't do that. It's too technically complex, or you don't understand it, and that's that's understandable. But in the last year, most definitely the accessibility of the platforms is amazing. And from a while it only works for enterprise perspective, or it only works as it doesn't work for small businesses. At the moment, that's categorically untrue, right? You can set up a small business with the same tools that a Fortune 500 is using, a Fortune 50 is using in an afternoon, right? And if you don't know how to do it yourself, there's programs where you can learn, or to Akanksha's point is, I can ask ChatGPT, or teach me how to set up M365, right? It's not a challenge to access these services anymore. So saying, it's only for enterprise, it's definitely a misnomer.
Yeah, I don't know if it's not a challenge, but it's certainly not a barrier to entry that there used to be, because it's interesting to see, because we are so engrossed in it, right? All four of us are like, we do cloud every day. Like, this is where we live. There's still a ton of businesses, companies, and everything that rely on the internet, and that's the extent of where they know where things live, right? So getting people from that sort of, I just need an accounting system that works, to taking ownership of the inventory or whatever it might be, there's still a little bit of a gap there. And I think, to Akanksha's point, that will absolutely change over time in the next, say, 5 years, and it'll be much more approachable with tools like ChatGPT, as is up in the times right now. But no, there will be many tutorials and helper tools that will let us do a bunch of the things that currently seems a little bit complex or far-fetched, right? And that will only change. I think I'm guessing in the next 5 years, cloud's going to be such an integral part of everything we do. We're not even going to call it cloud. It's just going to be compute, right? It's not even a question. It's not going to be, which machine are you buying, sort of thing. It's going to be which cloud platform are you using, if anything. That's probably more to the point. We're not going to own any hardware, I don't think.
Yeah,
I think it's very similar to kind of what phones have become. It was an interesting perspective of like, oh, you have a phone, great. Oh, you've got the new smartphone that has a touchscreen. Like I remember like the first person in my class that would have gotten like an iPhone in the room, and we all crowded being like, oh my God, this can understand a touch. Like this is bizarre. And I think, I mean, you look at it now, it's like everyone has a phone, and that's just a base level expectation. Even, I mean, I compared this to when I was in India a couple of months ago, and I was like, it's just, I mean, the usage is next level in terms of comparison, right? But like, no one cares what type of phone it is or what it is. They just know how to get on the internet and they can use it. It's become second nature at this stage. And I think your point's right. Like the next couple of years, that is essentially what cloud will become.
It's all about, obviously, if a service is easily accessible and it benefits you, you'll use it. There's statistics out there like around piracy, right? People purchase Netflix now because it's easier. If you make a service accessible, they're just going to adopt it rather than go and say, well, let me go find XYZ downloads or something like that, right? So phone's the same thing over the last 10 years.
And
they've just become so consumer.
Sorry, Jane. I think we overlapped a little bit there.
It happens.
You go.
No.
I think one of us is having a bit of slowdown. Okay. Tell you what, we have a question. Let's do a question and reset for a sec. So, Dylan asks, how does everyone think data sovereignty is going to evolve as the cloud becomes more ubiquitous? That's a good question.
Cool. That's a deep question.
Tough.
Yeah, it's interesting because just because we have regions of cloud that expands the world doesn't mean we're going to have no country borders, right? We're still going to have legislation in all these different areas that we will have to adhere to. So I think something like data sovereignty is going to be one of the critical differentiators probably between both cloud platforms but also products. Because it's going to be really, really tricky. Just looking at something like GDPR, how to use that, even if you are an American company or an Australian company and you have an online product, you still almost always adhere to GDPR for Europe because it's likely you're going to have customers in Europe, right? That's the tricky one. I don't know where it's going to go, to be honest. I don't think it's going to change dramatically from where it is now because we're not going to have global legislation, are we?
No. I mean, I know I'm not one of our experts, but my hot take for my 10 cents on this is that, I agree with Lars. I think in the foreseeable future, data sovereignty is still, it might be a region like the EU, or it might be an individual country, but I think, we'll still see because, most cloud providers are adding additional regions. So, the data center is physically in a particular geography. And I think that sort of consideration will still be important for the foreseeable because doing global data sovereignty legislation is very tricky. And, there's a lot of, everyone's got to play nice and agree on what should be done, which is hard enough within a country or a group of countries, let alone globally.
100%. I think to Dylan's question, the stark reality is it's probably only going to get harder more than anything else. You're going to with the services being more accessible, you're more likely to make mistakes. That's challenging, and I suppose that kind of segues into making sure that you've got the right skills or the right capabilities to actually look after your cloud solution. So it becomes ubiquitous, but how do you actually address those requirements? And it's not an easy problem to solve, unfortunately.
No, it depends on your product as well, right? There's different, like legislation's complex at the best of times. So depending on what it is you're trying to create, you're going to have different rules around even data sovereignty, as if you take that as its own thing. That very good question, Dylan. I appreciate that because it's very tricky to answer.
Yeah,
I think the answer is going to be easier in the next couple of years with, I think, everything happening right now, there is so many changes going on that it's going to be within the next couple of months, we're going to start seeing different laws and regulations getting put into place. Like the AI Act, I think EU is working on it at the moment. I haven't read anything into it other than the fact that I know it exists at the moment, but things like that are going to start becoming more commonplace. There are going to be GDPR has changed the front already in so many different areas. It's just going to become a little bit clearer, I think, in the next couple of years. But yeah, it's hard to guess now.
So I wanted to dig into something that we touched on in our previous point. You were saying that there's sometimes people feel there's a lack of skills and a lack of knowledge in cloud. So what's your take on that? Do you think that we, is there a lack of skills out there? Is that something that as an industry, we're in need of more people?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's... like Pluralsight just did this report, like State of Cloud, I think it's called, and it's something like 7% of technologies have the cloud skills they need for like the next 5 years, based on certain criteria, right? It's very, very few people that actually have cloud skills that are sufficient to do like a job for the future, and it's something like 85% of companies are looking for cloud people. So there's this huge gap between what people need, the companies need, and what people actually have in terms of skills. So I don't think that's just like yes, focus on cloud. If anything, we're going to need other things as well. It's not like that, but yeah, there's a massive shortage of skilled people in cloud computing.
Most definitely, organizations they're screaming for talent at the moment, which is a great opportunity for those looking to transition or enter the industry, which is phenomenal. But yeah, organizations are really hurting at times, and anecdotally, until recently, the Australian market in general for jobs is just red hot. You could, in effect, start looking for a role in the cloud, and maybe it's an entry level role, but there's a lot out there, and you can kind of write your own ticket if you play your cards right. So,
yeah. So I just found the report. It's 48% of organizations rate themselves as having high levels of cloud maturity, but only 7% of organizations has made no investment into the cloud, right? So there's lots of investments into the cloud, and lots of companies that have that are focusing a ton on transitioning or investing in cloud computing. But then at the same time, there's like tiny portion that actually have the skills in terms of workers or skilled technologists. So it's a very interesting sort of dichotomy almost of what companies want and what skills people have, and it's only going to exacerbate more over the next 2 years, I reckon.
Akanksha, I know you're an AI-based MVP, which I always view as kind of the tip of the spear with regards to cloud. Is it worse in that kind of industry vertical, or is it even more challenging there?
I think what's happening, I think it's regardless of vertical, I think people want to be involved. People know it's a thing. I think the gap, which we don't know how to quantify how big that gap actually is, but to some seems absolutely giant, is okay, I know that is a thing, but how do I actually get involved? What does it all mean? How do I even get started? That part is a real big problem. Like, how do we actually get people to understand what it is, and that it isn't as complicated as it quite often sounds and is made out to be. Like, if I can figure it out as I kind of go and like start clicking a few buttons and start going through things, I'm not saying I'm an expert on those kind of like on everything, but it starts making sense fairly quickly. And I think it's just that part of that accessibility will help with the skills. But in terms of shortage, 100%. I think AI is a specific, Australia isn't necessarily there yet in terms of demand. Oh, sorry, not demand, maturity. There is a demand. Every single business out there wants AI. They just want that buzzword. They're like, no, we're doing this thing. But that they're not mature enough to actually be able to implement any of the solutions, whether that's because the data isn't there or data solutions aren't fully up to that date, or just the fact that they're not capturing the correct amount of data that they need to be able to implement an AI solution. So AI as a whole in Australia specifically is a little bit lagging. But skills, it's always going to be a case of we need more people. We'll always need more people. And
obviously, as you go from low maturity to get to that kind of tip of the spear, you obviously need the skills to support those foundational elements, right? So.
Exactly. Like, AI and everything it involves, you can't do any of it unless you've got everything else underneath it ready to go, which is having a good basic foundation to store that data. And then have you captured the correct data? And then is it properly historically stored and can we access it later? And is it secure? No one else is putting in weird stuff in there. No one's going in and janking up the security out there. Like all of these things you build up before you can even be like, let me test a specific thing out with this data. Like you don't even get to that level until it takes years to get like a good level of data stored in and have some kind of use of it.
Yeah. Now, I guess this again, leading. Obviously, our conversation is flowing so lovely this evening. So, on that skills gap, I mean, obviously, the way to deal with the skills gap is to get more people with the right skills. So, if there are people watching the stream or watching it later, and they're thinking cloud might be something they want to go into. So, either they're people studying at the moment, I'm going to throw it very broad, people studying at the moment, they might be just finished studying, or they might be people currently working in other parts of IT, transitioning into cloud. What advice, how do you get into a cloud focused role? I mean, I've asked you, that's quite a few questions in one there. So take the bits that you will, but how would you get into a cloud focused role if that's something you wanted to do? Ooh. How did you start, Lars? You were just about to say,
how did I start?
I'm going to preempt you. How did you get into cloud?
Ask the old guy. I get it. I've been software developing for 20 years almost. Professionally for about 20 years, and the cloud, I sort of fell into it because it was everybody was using IE for web stuff. IE 5.5, then 6 kind of thing. Like that's how old it is, right? And then suddenly Chrome came along and you went, oh dear, what is this new thing? And you start pressing all the buttons, right? So it's a bit, I was doing actual Google, I did one of the first Google Maps logistics implementations in Australia, which was kind of fun. 2007, was it? Or 8, whatever it was. And then we sort of, after that, we sort of, well, we're going to host it in a data center. And then you start pressing those buttons with whatever data center it was somewhere in Melbourne. And then suddenly there's this, Microsoft has done this Windows Azure, as it was called. And there's these two things, worker role and web role, that you can get it to do some computation for you up there. And it wasn't called cloud. It was called, like Windows Azure. And it was literally just like hardly any services, right? And the portal was built in Silverlight. Yay! Anyway, Silverlight was amazing. And so it was sort of a progressive sort of journey of discovery almost, like, oh, let's try that bit. Let's try, does that work for anything? And then it just appealed to me because I didn't have to do any of the, what is popularly called yak shaving, which is all the boring bit you have to do before you get to the thing you really want to do. And there was none of that. It was just straight into, it's a bit like Azure Functions today almost, right? You just write your function and off it goes. There's no, orchestration of anything. And it was a bit the same feeling of, oh, this is kind of cool. And it just scales. I don't have to actually do anything. It just works. And I just keep throwing things at it and it keeps working. And I'm like, that's amazing. And it just evolved from there. So I've used it pretty much since the start without really knowing I was using cloud. And then down the track, it became more obvious that, oh, actually, it's not in our own data center. It's somewhere, right? The region, we don't know exactly where it is. And it becomes irrelevant where it is, exactly where it is. So how did I start with cloud? It was a journey of discovery. It's a bit like Akanksha was saying, oh, you get mobile phone and everybody has, oh, is that the new iPhone 4 or 6 or 10 or whatever? And now people just, oh, you've got a phone. Okay, good. Right. No one cares. No one even knows what it is, right? There's no difference between any smartphone whatsoever. They all do exactly the same, even though some of the nerds will say that they are different, but they're not. So now we've gotten to a point where we just use cloud. We just have it in VS Code. We just have it anywhere, and it just works. Even when we're not online, it works, which blows my mind. So how do I get into it? Just pressing all the buttons all the time.
It's a really, I think that's a common sentiment though that's expressed by people in the industry, right? So, you talk to people who've been around for 5 years, and a lot of people will kind of naturally say, "Oh, I just fell into cloud," right? Because they potentially started in a in an area that was related. Like for me, I started working in a physical data center and doing those sorts of things. And when I got to a certain point, I was like, oh, this cloud thing's pretty cool. And I was lucky, Azure, Lars, I didn't have to deal with Windows Azure. I kind of came into Microsoft's Azure right around the time that everything transitioned from ASM to ARM, which was perfect because I got none of the yucky Silverlight and all of the goodness.
You missed out on all the frustration.
I missed out, yeah. But the reality is, I kind of fell into it, right? So that's all good and well, but we really need to be looking at, well, how do we bring down barriers? Like Dylan's put it in the chat, which is excellent. Like around bringing up less barriers for people to transition. So maybe you're in a related role, like a business focused role. Well, are you interested, right? And to Lars's point, sometimes it's just a case of clicking all the buttons, but then there's also questions around, well, which button do I click? Like, where do I start? Like it can, from the start, it can look like a really steep learning curve. So it's about organizations facilitating that.
Not to interrupt, I just want to say, Dylan, if you're still on the stream, could you give a little bit more detail about what the barriers are that you're finding? Because I think there's a ton of material and stuff out there to get into cloud, but I could be wrong.
No, yeah, and I think the thing is for one of the barriers I at least see is people look at it and go, cool, I want to transition. I don't even know where to begin. Right now, there's probably some sensible things like getting certified or picking something that interests you. But I definitely think that in that space, there's probably some things organizations can do a little bit better as well.
Would you say, though, James, to your point there, you talked about certifications. Now, I know certifications can be a polarizing topic in tech, like whether people think they need them or they don't. Of course, there's a lot of certifications out there. But what I have seen sometimes is people go out and spend an awful lot of their own money. And some of these certifications are not cheap and end up, and it still doesn't get them where they want to be. So, and question to the panel, is there, like, do you have a recommended way of learning and is it certifications? Is it free material? What is it that you would recommend someone did if they were wanting to make that transition or start out in a cloud-based kind of role?
I was going to say that actually. It was like, there is, to Lars's point around how many content there is in cloud. There is so much content out there that I think it actually is one of those things of like the dilemma of choosing into something. It's just impossible. A part of it was like when you said like, well, how did you get started? I'm like, I remember the first job, it wasn't I was not a technical person beginning. I did a maths degree and I was like, okay, I'm going to do a tech job now. And one of the first things they were like, oh, go look at Azure. I'm like, what's Azure? Next, please. Like, keep answering these questions as they keep mentioning topics. And I'm like, right, what's this? And then I just go around in it, like set up a virtual machine and you'll understand. I'm like, huh? Like, what does that even mean? Like, set this up and it'll all make sense to you magically. Like, no, it doesn't. That's not how it works. But clicking a few of those buttons did help of like, oh, now that I read these articles, when they keep saying click this button, that button now makes sense because I've seen it. Like, it was that kind of the journey for me where I learned because I'm like, okay, if I mess around with this and get a janky solution, I can kind of figure it out. That's how I learn. The amount of people out there who are not going to be learners like that, who need to understand the basis of, okay, but how is this working and why is it working like this before they'll go try that out, is huge as well. And I think it kind of does come back to what suits you best. And my kind of, and this is based on I've mentored a bunch of people moving in and doing like career transitioning into tech, specifically into cloud engineering or anything related to tech at this stage is also just most likely using cloud. Is go to meetups. You'll feel really, really confused and lonely and awful in some of those meetups because they'll talk about all these topics as if it's like commonplace and it all works and all makes sense to them. It doesn't. It doesn't make sense to anybody. But what will happen if you go to more than one event is you'll start hearing same topics and you're like, oh no, I've heard that before. And I generically remember what that was. And it just helps at least get a foundational layer of where you can start being one of those people that is like, no, all these words make sense to me now. And it just starts building that up, because the more you start hearing about the content, the easier it gets. And through meetups and stuff, you'll find networks, you'll find people, and they'll be able to point you to the right direction of like, hey, I did this thing. It might also work for you. It might not, but at least it's a pointer in that dilemma of having to choose from a million different options in front of you of which way do I go next. There will be a community out there that would be able to help at least get started.
And with those events too, generally you'll find that the people who are attending them, they're the ones in the community or in in your local area who are the ones who are most passionate, right? They're either there because they genuinely care and want to learn something, which is phenomenal to see, or they're there to kind of be around like-minded people and interact, which is good. So being in those environments is excellent, because you can kind of turn around to someone and say, hey, I didn't get that. Can you put it maybe in some simpler terms? Which is good. Like, and that's, there's a real world presence to that, which is excellent, because you can almost get support, but also there's digital options for that as well. Like, I know that when I went through certification, actually for AWS, I went and joined the Discord, and it was a community where I could ask questions and go, hey, how does this work? Right? Like,
Totally.
Getting engaged is really important.
I think there's two sides to it, to be honest. I think there's one side of it is, how do I get the skills and where do I start learning? And then the other side of the continuation even is like, how do I make this into a career or something that I actually can pay bills with? I'm pretty sure that anyone can learn cloud. I don't think it's any more difficult than being a car mechanic or being a farmer or any of those sort of things. You can absolutely learn it. The question is whether you want to, right? And so Dylan's saying, because it made me think from Dylan's comments in the chat, that there are these two sides. Because the first part of it that you need to do is actually figure out what to learn, and that's the hard part of it. And because we touched on certifications, I am going to mention them as well, because I think for a lot of people, they can serve a really good purpose. Now, I did plug for me a AZ900 certification course. And the reason I'm saying that is that, thank you, is that many thousands of people have taken it, and I've got so much good feedback on it. Hey, that was just what I needed to get into the cloud and figure out what I don't know. Right?
Lars,
it was just enough to peak.
Just for anyone who's listening, what is AZ900? Just in case they don't know.
Yes, I was getting to that.
Yes. Oh, you were getting to it. Okay.
Yeah, because that wasn't anyway.
Sorry, I was ruining your build up. Sorry.
That's all good. So AZ900 is the fundamentals of Azure. So if you have never heard of Azure, if you've never heard of cloud, maybe you have a little bit of computing experience, maybe you don't, you can go through the certification of AZ900, Azure Fundamentals, and get an idea of all the things that are in Azure to a certain level. It's designed for people that don't have any experience. If I took it, I'd find it terribly easy. But if I took something around how to do interpretive dance, I'll find it very hard because I've never done it. Right. So the level is right for people that have no skills in that field. Then once you have that, you can then either figure out, hey, this is not for me, or maybe it is. You can then see there are certain ways that you can dive into cloud computing, because there are so many different areas, as Dylan mentioned as well. And then how do you then make that into a career? Well, that's generally speaking, I'd say you need 2 or 3 certifications to kind of feel comfortable with the knowledge and the tools that you have. Any more than that, and you do it because you want to, not because you have to, I'd say. But that's a very general statement. There are exceptions. But that means that you then have some sort of idea of what cloud can do. It is not going to get you a job. I'll kill that myth every time I'm on a stream about certification. A certification will never get you a job. That is not the point. The point is that you build up a skill set and you have some idea of what cloud can do. What gets you a job is your enthusiasm and your eagerness to learn about the cloud, which means you're going to go out and do a project, or you're going to join a open source community, or you're going to join meetups, or you're going to learn from a Discord channel, whatever it is that is out there that you gravitate towards normally. Because everybody learns in different ways. There's no silver bullet for this, unfortunately. So yeah, that's how I would go about it.
And I mean, I was going to sound like if we're talking about self shout outs, like I run another podcast where it's literally just talking to people career transitioning into tech. So if it's a case of like, I'm not sure how to go about it, there are so many people out there who don't, but also manage to find their way somehow.
Yep.
And it helps when you've got like a template of like, oh, maybe this might work for me, because this is a similar path. That might be something that goes there too.
And I'd like to plug Akanksha's podcast as well, because it's really good.
Yeah, it's coming back for season 2, so enjoy. Pat's uncovered. I should probably say the name.
Dylan makes another point there around there being sort of barriers and gatekeeping, and particularly in Australia, and all of us are Australia based here, and probably most people listening are. He was saying a lot of companies always seem to be looking for senior roles. So, I mean, I know obviously I'm a security person. I know the security industry is notorious for gatekeeping junior roles. I know it is a wider industry problem, but I particularly know how bad it is in security. Because if you're looking for jobs and there are job descriptions and they just say we need 5 years experience, minimum, or even like 2 or 3, and you don't have that, I mean, what advice would you give to someone who's, coming up against that as a brick wall? Because I have this discussion a lot with people.
Oh yeah, I'm a bit
tough.
bullish on that one. I just say go for it anyway. It's a bit like when you go to university, right? If you do, if that's your path. If you don't, that's cool too. I'm not saying do it, but if you do, because I did, the only reason really you go to university is to get your first job. Right. So
true.
You spend 3 years, 5 years, whatever. And the only reason you do that really in sort of career terms is to get your first job. After you get your first job, no one cares. But it's hard to get that first job, which is why people go to university to build up their tool set so they know kind of what to do. It's a bit the same, I think, conundrum in this case is that you do your certifications and your side projects and whatever it is to upskill and learn something about it. But it's still, you got to get that first job, right? And then you might have to go through, I don't know, a whole bunch of applications and ways to do it. But a good way to do it is to go to meetups, as an example, because you meet people and they go, oh yeah, we need someone that does that. Oh, you do that. Oh, let's talk more. It's much, much more powerful to have that in rather than some anonymous CV, right? So if you can do it that way, do it. And that, again, shows your eagerness and your enthusiasm for you wanting to do this, because hopefully you want to. Yeah. So just do it.
I think more than anything else, is getting a job. I can understand it's tough, right? Everyone wants 10 years of experience, or on a product that may have been around for 8. It's like the industry needs to align their expectations, but also at the same time, like it's without using a cliche, sometimes it's a little bit about picking yourself back up and running at it again. But what at least I've seen get the most success at people is passion, right? So attending community events, engaging, like the reality is there's amazing tool, like you can use LinkedIn and just go, well, this person looks kind of cool, I'm going to send them a connection request, and you can start to engage with people in the most basic way, and really start to show your passion, and someone will eventually look at any new and upcoming person to the industry and go, you know what, I'm going to give this person a shot.
This has turned into a career counseling panel.
I know.
But you're right. Absolutely.
But it works. I mean, this is all basic stuff that is there because it works.
And cloud is, cloud, I think we've already agreed, cloud is the future, and we're going to need more people to do it. So I think, and last one, and because I think this is the last thing kind of on this point before we move on is, and Dylan actually put this in the comments as well, is he's made the comment that it can be pretty intimidating, that there's so many things in cloud, and so you don't know where to start. And also, with cloud, I'm just going to build on his point a little bit. It can also be really scary that you can't know everything because it keeps changing constantly. And if we look back at pre-cloud land, of course, you could know everything about your particular bit of IT. And then maybe every few years you do an upgrade of your software or your operating system or your hardware, whatever it was. But, most of the time you would know and things wouldn't be as sort of, moving as much. So I guess, what would you say to people? Like, do you just have to, I know what I would say, that is, I think you just have to be comfortable with the fact you're not going to know everything and things change really quickly. And getting comfortable with that fact will help you a lot with cloud.
100%. I like to use the term professional amateur, right? Like, I'm really comfortable with just being like, really not very good at stuff. Which is, the reality is in cloud, you can be really competent at something on Tuesday and 6 months later you go, hang on a minute, the stuff that was relevant then is still not relevant today. Like, I had a conversation this week around Sentinel log archiving, and I was like, oh yeah, put it in a storage account, and didn't even consider that there was a new feature with basic logs and all this other stuff, right? But like, that advice, Sarah, how old is that? So that's probably like 18 months old, that advice,
Even longer, actually. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yes, it is. Yes. It is not up to date. No, and it's not that long in compared with. I mean, Sentinel's only been around for about 3.5 years. So,
the reality is it changes so quickly. So, while everyone, it's looping back a little bit, is everyone might be looking for senior roles. Senior is a relative term in industry. Like, it's just be comfortable with that change more than anything else.
I worked for a consultancy that had the lowest level of consultant was senior because it looked better. So you never
charge
know.
more.
Yeah,
I worked for a consultancy where we weren't allowed to put our job title on the on our email signatures because then they could work out what level we were, and I don't know what they. I think it was for charging purposes. I don't know. But I think you're right. I think senior in terms of cloud is relative because your knowledge, if you don't continually learn, your knowledge is out of date so quickly, like so quickly.
You'll never see a job ad that says cloud engineer either, though. It will have some sort of specificity, I think. Otherwise, it's the wrong job ad, I'd argue.
Yeah.
And that actually leads on to oh, sorry, go on, Akanksha.
I was just going to say, I think people ask that. It's like, oh, what do I need to be able to transition into tech and blah, blah, blah. Like, what skills? I'm like, the only skill at this stage is just like your ability to learn and learn pretty quickly. I don't like it really, you really don't need to know everything and you don't need to know the in and outs of everything. But I think what will help, and I mean, obviously from a very biased opinion of like what will help is knowing generically what all these things are, because you've heard about them. Like, I'm not a software engineer at all, but I know most of the terms because I have a lot of software engineer friends and they talk a lot about software engineering. It's very annoying. But when things come up, I'm like, oh, I know what that means. Like, it makes sense. Yes. But those things help. And when a situation comes up of like, well, okay, I need to build something now, for example, building a website the other day for a conference that we're running. I'm like, okay, well, it can't be that hard because I put it in ChatGPT and like it built it for me. But like the nuances of like trying to fix things, I'm like, you kind of just learn as you go and you fix it as it comes up and you kind of start deep diving as it happens. So yeah, just get ready to learn kind of on the fly and learn pretty quickly.
Oh, we got someone from Nigeria.
Hello, Nigeria. It must be quite early. It must be quite early for you over there.
Oh, yeah. I guess it'll be
relatively early.
9 a.m. Anyway.
Yeah. If anyone's got any questions for the panel, by the way, throw them in there. But coming back to, because this whole panel is about, is cloud computing critical? We've talked about careers. We talked about it being for everybody. What else? What do you think? Sort of, again, this is, putting the question out there. How do you think cloud, obviously we've sort of said cloud, we reckon will probably become ubiquitous and it'll become like a non-event like with phones, but what do you foresee cloud being You know, like, what do you think it will be in the next 5 years in terms of tech? Do you think we'll even stop using the word cloud because we're not even going to distinguish because pretty much everything will be cloud? I mean, where do we think this is going future-wise?
Can I put something on the wish list?
Yes.
No more VMs. It's on my wish list.
That will never happen, James. Back in the box.
No, I want Microsoft and the other cloud providers to look after VMs, and I never want to see another one in my entire life.
Yeah, I still think they're going to be around.
Sorry, why do you not want to see that? So VM's a virtual machine for people watching who haven't gone across it. But
it's a bit of a segue, I suppose. But for me, at least, the benefits of everything else outweigh the drawbacks. So a virtual machine, you think of it like something that you have to look after, right? It's like it's analogous to your laptop. You have to take it around with you. You make sure you not drop it. Try and keep it up to date and keep it clean. There's a lot of work that comes with a virtual machine, right? And as we grow and the cloud gets more powerful, there's these higher tier services. So you'll hear terms like platform as a service or functions as a service or software as a service used, where you can do less and get more. And that, to me, is I suppose in the next 5 years, I want to be doing less and less and less and getting more and more out of it. I kind of joke and say wish list no more VMs because VMs are hard work, and Sarah can attest to this as a security professional, right?
Yep. I hear what you're saying. I just don't think it's going to happen.
No,
we're still going to have people that
not under any illusions.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't necessarily think we're going to keep saying cloud and cloud and cloud. Yeah, it's a bit like saying mainframe a little bit, I suspect. It's just the word we use right now to distinguish on premises and off premises. I suspect, but again, I don't know. I don't really mind. I don't mind the specificity of it, that we know what we're talking about. But at one point, it probably becomes insignificant. We don't need to use that terminology. I don't know. I still think everything's going to be cloud based one way or another, or edge, which is the new thing. Everything's going to be on the edge. So, yeah.
I think 5 years is almost, in my head, it really is just too far down the line to actually make any kind of change. Like, it really, it has become a stage of like, I don't know what the hell's going to happen in the next 6 months anymore. Like, everything I've seen so far this year, which it hasn't even finished 3 months yet, has completely changed the landscape, at least for me, in terms of how I work and what I'm going to have to be doing over the next couple of months, which is essentially getting up to speed with OpenAI and learning what the hell ChatGPT is and what it properly actually does, because that's what anybody and everyone around me is talking about. And I think, I don't know. Yes, of course, we want more people working in cloud and for it to be a lot more ubiquitous and all that kind of stuff. But I think the next couple of months will really highlight exactly how that changes. I think ChatGPT, the way it's been changed, it's going to change a lot of things, education being primarily one of them. I still hold on to that belief. I think people are undermining its changes and its effects that it's going to have so far, because it's going to change the way we learn. It's going to change the way we educate our kids and the way they grow up to actually interact with a lot of the things around them, and what kind of an impact that has in the next 5 years. I have no idea. I could not tell you. I'm going to just be like here hoping that I'm still around to actually be like, okay, I still know how to use tech, I think. Like, do I just become one of those old people being like, I don't know how to work this thing anymore? I don't know if that's my next thing in life. Like, it probably will be. Like, me becoming my own mom being like, I don't know how to turn this thing on is a quite high possibility at this stage.
I'm already there. I've asked the teenagers to help me turn on the Xbox. I'm there.
Oh, and hello, Kalana from Sri Lanka. Thanks for joining us. And Dylan has a question, which is, we'll go with Dylan's question first, which is, would you say Kubernetes is going to replace the part of VMs in the future?
Oh, dear God, I hope not.
Yeah, same. Kubernetes is a great platform, don't get me wrong, but to me, you're replacing one platform that requires a lot of love with another platform that requires a lot of love. right? It's definitely has its use cases and supports a lot of engineering outcomes, but I don't think it's going to replace that in the future. My view is that higher tier services, functions, serverless, they should be replacing VMs in the future.
I keep thinking that Kubernetes is the thing that we're going to try and migrate away from in 3 years. But it's, I've had bad experiences with it. You shouldn't ask me.
And then another question, which is, will ChatGPT integrate to Azure? This
already has.
It's already there.
It does today.
It's already there. This is what we say. This is how quick the cloud is changing. Like
exactly.
It was interesting because there was a post earlier today. I don't even know if I've got it handy on me, but it was someone. Oh, it is. Yeah, I screenshotted it because it freaked me out. It's essentially, I don't know if you can see it, but like 100 lists, like links in a row. And these are all the announcements that have just come out in the last 2 months about AI and Azure and ChatGPT.
I think I've seen a similar one, but it was actually a timeline format, and it was literally Christmas to now, which is only March.
Yeah, and then that's my point of like the amount of changes and upgrades and everything has really just kind of very quickly changed. But yeah, no, it's there. The Copilot announcements with Microsoft 365 and Power Platform, like all of this stuff is just becoming, it's new and it's amazing. And it's like a thing that you're like, oh, it's like a wow and a wonderment. But within the next couple of months, this is going to be almost equivalent to you sending a text and not thinking about what you're typing, because autocorrect will get you and it understands how you mistype words properly and fixes it for you. And it'll essentially become part of your day-to-day.
Yeah, it's mad. I'm writing a book on Azure currently, which I'm such a slow writer. I'm now considering adding a chapter on something AI, even though it wasn't in there, just because it's like, so I can put on the front cover, includes ChatGPT or whatever clickbaity thing we can put on there. Right? It's it's really is. It's permeating.
Get ChatGPT to write the chapter for you, mate. It'll save you a bit of time.
Yeah, with all the mistakes it does. No, thanks.
It's fairly hallucinating a lot less now in the new update, but that's the thing.
Right, yeah, I am using version 4, but it's still, wow. It's I asked it to do like basic Azure CLI commands, and it messes those up. So I'm like, I have no confidence in this.
I think
I've had it do some decent things for me, but yeah, it's hit and miss because it's still early days.
Yeah. It works mostly.
Yeah,
but
I call ChatGPT currently. It's like, well, I think it could have been Akanksha. You said this actually, and I've stolen it off you. That ChatGPT is like the intern. You have to check its work. So I love that analogy. Like it's great, but you need to check its work before you put it out there. And I think that's great.
There's one more question. Do you want to just jump into that before we?
Yeah, let's do it. And I don't know the answer to this. This is probably an Akanksha question, but what is the difference between DevOps and AI ops?
There isn't much, to be honest. And generally, you'll see it kind of if you start Googling things around it, it'll be ML ops that most people refer it to as, because it's the whole thing of like, what is AI? No one knows. What is ML? No one knows, but they're kind of all the same thing. Like predominantly ML is essentially what you actually end up doing within AI in a day-to-day basis. But there really isn't a difference. The difference is just the fact that a software development kind of pipeline has a specific format to it, which is basically building code and then editing and going back and version control, blah, 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 before you deploy and go from testing to production and all the different environments. It's exactly the same thing for machine learning. The only thing that really changes is the way you develop a machine learning solution, which is basically, have I got the correct data? And how do I source control my data sets? And if I have to change the data, okay, how do I make sure the real version control is happening on them? And then if I'm testing, is it in the right format and the right containers? And if I get one experiment correct, and that's the one I want to continue on with, can I store that before I update it? And then how do I go back when new data has come in and make sure it's not drifting too far away from reality and going back to update it? It's basically source controlling that. So there isn't a big difference. It's just the fact that it's doing it on top of a slightly different pipeline of work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
There you go.
we've got another question, which I'll try and get through just, whilst we still have the time. Rev asks, for those who are looking to transition from a non-computer science IT background, would an MS, I assume that's a master's, in computer science with cloud computing help, or would you just jump into certification programs directly? Now, I would say, personally, I would just not spend all that money on tertiary education and go straight into it. I am biased, I'll say, because I have a history degree and have no tertiary qualifications from a sort of higher education institute in tech. But that's my opinion. Experts, what do you think?
I think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
How do you learn best?
It does.
If you need a structured kind of environment where it forces you, like I know for me, like I would not. I did a degree and I'm never going back to college again. Like I can't do it to myself. And it's more because it just doesn't work well for me. The stress of it all was absolutely horrifying. And I couldn't do it again. But I am somehow still learning and teaching myself all these new things. And most of it is just because I set myself deadlines that are slightly unrealistic and then I force myself to have to do them. But what you need to kind of figure out what is the way you learn and what is the easiest way for you to do that. So that's just in terms of learning. But if you're kind of looking at it from a kind of job perspective, or especially if it's an international context of visas and stuff, masters might be the option because it gives you the ability to go and work in that place. And there's a lot of different nuances to that answer, essentially. It really comes down to the person.
That was my short version of that was, it depends.
I'm trying to not say that as a consultant.
Yeah, I know, because it's not helpful. I think I agree with you, Akanksha. It's hard. It's really hard. If you have someone that says, hey, I'll give you a job if you want to learn the thing, you go, okay, then do that. But if you're sort of starting from scratch, then maybe you need to do a master's. But certainly you can. Tertiary education is often somewhat behind. You're not going to learn the latest and greatest, but you will get a more valuable piece of paper in some context. So, yeah.
Definitely more valuable piece. It's probably, just on cost, it's probably one of the more expensive options. But
I wasn't talking about cost, to be honest, but there are certainly institutions that will look favorably on a master's degree, for example.
Oh, agreed. I think, to Akshanka's point, it's all about understanding how you learn and what's right for you. A master's is most definitely valuable in some of those scenarios, but also, there's programs out there where you can go and sign and do like a 3-month boot camp where they put you in a room and put your hands on for 3 months. That's a viable option for a lot of people as well. Certification and self-teaching is a viable option. You really kind of need to do a little bit of self-reflection and go, what if I'm doing X, Y, and Z, what am I going to get out of it, and do I see value in that? Everyone's different. Like I know, in a similar vein. Like I could never go back to uni, and I was a horrible student when I was there. So it's about figuring out what actually works for you.
Yeah. Oh, good question though, Rev. Thanks for that.
That's a good question. It looks like we lost Akanksha. Not sure what happened there.
I had enough of that.
Sorry, Wi-Fi just dropped. That was bizarre.
Not sure what happened there, but I think we're nearly up for time. Panel, thank you for joining us. Did you have any last thoughts you'd like to leave our viewers, listeners with? The burning that you need to get off your chests?
Cloud computing is amazing. Do it. There are so many options. There's so many paths in it that if you have any interest in technology, even if you don't want to program, even if you don't want to touch a server, even like whatever it is that you don't want to do, you don't have to, because there's so many options. So just do it. Just
dive in. The rewards are great. It's an interesting industry. Not going anywhere, that's for certain. Be exciting.
Yeah, I think given the current climate of everything that's happening, I think don't be daunted by it. Like, don't be scared of it. It's a lot of, it just sounds way worse than it probably actually is. In reality, there is so many options and availabilities and offers available to you. Make the most of them. There's wherever you're based. Like I know there's communities based in Nigeria and Sri Lanka, and there's people coming in and doing remote stuff like this. Like, hit up all the people, make the most of the kind of opportunities and communities around you, and I'm sure there's a place for you existing in cloud that's just waiting.
For sure.
Well, I think we are at the top of the hour. So I think our time here is done. Lars, Akanksha, James, thank you for joining us. For those of you watching and listening, wherever you are, also thank you for joining us and thank you for your questions. And we will no doubt see you again on another exciting panel whenever they set one up for us, because we love a chat. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
See you later.